Okay, it's 6:01 and I'll call the meeting to order and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First order of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Meredith. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. General public comment. Is there anyone here tonight from the public who wishes to speak? All right. If not now, there's another opportunity at the end of the agenda. Consent agenda. Is there any questions in regards to the consent agenda, minutes, warrants? I did have a question on the contract recommendations. Let me find it here. It was the mid-year horizontal move. What exactly does that mean? I don't think I've seen that before.
So our teacher's schedule has 7 columns. So as teachers take professional development credits classes, they can move from one column to the next. For example, if they just have a bachelor's with, say, 7 credits, they're in the first column. Once they complete 3 more credits, they can move over to the bachelor's 10 column.
Yeah.
But they have to give, it's like instructions and rules and how they have to give notification, and they can move twice a year. They can either move at the very beginning of the year if they have all of the documentation in before the start of the school year, or they could have a mid-year move. If they didn't complete the classes and say until the fall, then they can move starting January. It's like January something, the middle of January.
Okay, yes, that was my question because and you just answered it. They can move twice a year. Okay, I didn't know that.
If they move in the middle of the year, they get half of the value of that.
Okay. And then my other question is the facilities director position on the support staff agreement?
That's it.
Okay, that's what I thought, but it's under support staff. So that's so that would just be, yeah, it's just like it was before.
Salary non.
Salary not used. Okay. Which needs board approval, correct? Or
Yes, that one was incorrectly placed, so the board need to approve that one, correct?
okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify. All right. I think that's,
Can I ask why are we is Lisa Whitman a Pulteney teacher?
She has 2 contracts. She has a 0.6 with Pulteney and a 0.4 with Love Springs.
Okay, because it says POES, so wasn't quite clear.
okay. That's all I had. So if there were any other questions, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as a whole.
Make that motion.
Motion by Matt. Any? You said Amanda had her hand raised?
Sorry, I was just I was a little slow. I apologize. The information about the executive assistant to the school admin, that's just for informational purposes, but is there a discussion to go along with that? I was just confused why that was in there, what that pertains to.
So my belief was that as we have a retirement, that the individual who is retiring, they were grandfathered as a union position, but then as we are hiring we are hiring as a non-union executive assistant, which is confidential. And so that's why someone asked me to place a job description. It's very similar to what we did at Proctor Elementary, that there was a administrative assistant who was grandfathered as a union admin assistant, but then as they retired, we hired as the executive assistant, which is that confidential. That is our goal, is at each of our buildings that our building administrators have access to one confidential executive assistant, which can work with them on personnel and other sensitive matters that a union person would not necessarily be able to, or association person would not be able to.
Okay, so it's really just clarifying what position would be filled in the future then.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
And so, I was asked to place the job description in here just for review, just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions about the consent agenda, Matt made a motion to approve it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Who were you, yes?
I'm kidding.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, on to finance. Lewis.
So the first item is the announced tuition. So every year we have to set a tuition rate for well in the town's elementary school. In case there was a student from outside of their town that wanted to attend one of their schools, pay tuition, whether it's an Irish student who had choice or another town that has choice, or it was just a student that maybe went to another town, to go to another town, they chose not to, and parents want to pay. So in the packet, I provided you with some information on what your current rate is, which is $16,500, as well as what some of the comparables are for other elementary schools in the area, as well as my recommendation for next year. So I'm recommending that we set the tuition rate at $17,500.
Have some of these other districts outside GRCSU approved their announced tuition rate, just out of curiosity?
Not that I know of at this time. We have to submit it to the state by January 15th. So I think a lot of them are approving them during the month of December and beginning of January.
Okay.
We won't know what other people are setting theirs at usually until January when that basically starts rolling.
When you brought this out, I think earlier, didn't we have Meadowy on here also? Remember them being a bit of an outlier.
I mean, this is the same schools that I had last year. Maybe in the past I've had Meadowy on here.
I thought I remember seeing Meadowy recently. Okay, my mistake.
Wellington did approve theirs last night. They approved 18,000. My recommendation was 17,500, and they decided to go with 18, which is fine. I mean, there's no science to this as far as for our schools. Wells Springs does not get a lot of tuition students, so typically in the past, the only students that we have received was from Ira to Middletown. I don't believe Wells has received any in at least in the last few years. But I mean, there's always that opportunity that you take a couple of tuition students, but it's not going to have a significant impact based on what we set it at.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, any other questions? Lewis would need a motion to approve the announced tuition.
Yeah, so Lewis, 17.5, is that sort of carries the student through? We're not covering any of that tuition. In other words, the student wouldn't cost district more than that.
I mean, we can look at what your allowable tuition rate is and see what it's actually costing. Wells Springs, I think I did look at that yesterday, and it's a little over 20,000. But the thing to consider is it's not costing you anything to have a tuition student here. Your expenses are already, it's not costing you. You already have teachers and staffing in place. You're not increasing staffing to have that additional student. If you were accepting a lot of tuition students and it was changing your staffing patterns, then that's something to consider. But anything you receive is additional revenue that you're receiving without any added, or with minimal added expense. I mean, there's some consumables, but not a big expense.
Okay. I'm good with this recommendation. We need a motion.
You're making the motion?
Or I'll make a motion to set the fiscal year 26 tuition at $17,500.
Okay. Motion by Matt. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? I didn't hear you.
I said aye, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now the budget.
So what you're looking to have in the packet is the draft 2 of the budget. So I'm just gonna go over the changes since last meeting. So if you look at the summary of changes, it sort of highlights there wasn't a lot of changes since last month. Based on the budget in front of you, total expenses up by 5.54%. Education spending is up 2.84%. And that's because of revenues that you have for good surpluses. You have an SU surplus of 67,000 and a prior year surplus for Wellspring of 158,000. So those are helping total spending to be less than your total expense. The big changes in here are tuition has been updated for secondary students and vocational tuition. Vocational tuition is still an estimate at this time. We have not received the official 6-semester rolling average from the state. I did receive an estimate from Stafford based on their calculations, but the official count is due in a week or two from the state. And then I do have a note on here. So at the last meeting, we talked about after school program and the possibility of transporting students from Wells to Middletown. And so I did check with our busing company, and the cost for that will be $107 per day for a total of $19,260. That is not in the budget. It's just a footnote for the board to discuss. And then if you go to the very end, I did provide some information on the tax rate. This is, I do want to just emphasize that these are just estimates at this point. There's 3 factors from the state that we're still waiting on that could have a significant impact on all of these calculations. So the calculated tax rate, we look at your total expense, which is the $6,378,000, and then we calculate education spending by taking any local revenues such as surpluses, refunds, any income that you're receiving for tuition, as well as interest income, and subtract that from total expense to get your education spending. So education spending is up to 2.84%.
Is there any way we can put that up on the monitor? This page 10?
I can probably, I got it right.
Yeah, Meredith, give me 1 second.
Yeah, I just think if there might be helpful for everybody.
It's the title page.
Just the last page.
All right.
So after we've calculated education spending, that's sort of where it shifts from our local control over to the rest of the calculation is based on state calculations. So the first piece is looking at a pupil count, and this is a number that the state calculates based on our average daily membership, which is taken at the beginning of the school year. Average daily membership, also called ADM, looks at your student count, and that is a 1-for-1. So 1 student equals 1 ADM. But when the state calculates pupils, they take a 2-year average of your ADM, and then they weight it based on several different factors, including poverty, population density, ELL, which is English language learners, as well as small schools. So that all of those factors go into it and weight it. And so the current pupil count for last year was 490. We have received a preliminary estimate for this year. I don't feel comfortable with that number yet, so I have not put it on here yet. It is very preliminary. They've told us it's going to change. So I'm just using last year's number for now. So we take our education spending divided by pupils to get our education spending per pupil, 12,448. The next piece is to divide that number by the yield. The yield is the number that is set by the legislators late in the session. At this time, we're using the tax commissioner's recommendation that he gave on December 1st, which is 8,553. Now, this number has changed since last year. There was a bill that was passed at the end of the session, which takes the yield and it applies a statewide adjustment to it. It applies the statewide adjustment to both the yield and the CLA. And that adjustment is based on the average CLA for all Vermont towns. That statewide adjustment is estimated to be 72% at this time. That could change. So if you back out that adjustment, that yield would be approximately 11,879, I believe it was, which is a 20% increase over last year. So it's hard to get that side-by-side comparison looking at this number right now because the calculation has changed. So similarly to last year when they also changed the calculation with Act 127. So we've had 2 years now where we can't really look at a side-by-side comparison. So we take, and just to state that, so an increase in the yield is good news for taxpayers. An increase in the yield lowers tax rates.
So that's why the CLA for Middletown and Wells is up so much?
We'll get to that in a second.
Okay, sorry.
So we take the spending per pupil divided by the yield to get our unified equalized tax rate of $1.46, approximately $1.40. It's $1.45. We then apply the CLA. And so the CLA is the other part of that calculation that has been adjusted. We don't have official CLAs yet, but the state has provided us estimates. And so the estimates that we have received for Middletown is a CLA of 70%. And then you apply that statewide adjustment of 72% to get a 97% CLA. And then for Wells, this estimated CLA that we have received is 96%. Once you apply that adjustment of 72%, it gives us a yield of 133%. And further down on the report, I have provided what our CLAs were last year. So Middletown was 82%, and Wells, who had recently done a reappraisal, was at 107%. So once we apply those CLAs, we're looking at a tax rate of $1.50 for Middletown and $1.09 for Wells, which is a 2.4% increase, or 2.4 cent increase for Middletown and a 4-cent decrease for Wells.
It's an increase for Middletown? No, it's a
Decrease.
decrease.
An increase of 2.4 cents, yeah. So just to reiterate, I mean, CLA is just an estimate at this time. We won't have the official ones until later this month. Pupil numbers are still an estimate. We'll have those later this month. And then the yield will be an estimate for the next few months. We won't have a better idea of that until probably after town meeting.
And with these estimates, you mean when they actually provide you with the accurate information for the CLA and the pupil, will that be, that's not going to change, right? Once they provide you with that updated,
The yield.
except for the yield.
Number won't change, no. I mean, the yield number might change in the next month or two, just like not the actual number, but they may start giving us different estimates as they get more information from So the yield is based on what they think spending is gonna come in at. And so once districts start providing that information to the state, then the state may start adjusting that yield if they see spending is coming in higher or lower. So they're basing this based on a 6% increase in spending. So if statewide spending comes in at 10%, they'll lower that yield. And if statewide spending comes in at 4%, they'll increase it.
Gotcha.
Right now, they don't have that. They only have preliminary information from districts. A lot of districts have not provided that information to the state because we're still in that budget setting process.
Okay.
My recommendation would be to wait till next month in order to approve the budget. Let's wait until we have CLA and pupil counts, so we can kind of see where that's falling and kind of determine if we're satisfied with the end result.
Is the ADM number that you're not happy with at the estimate, because it's lower or higher?
For Well Springs, it's at 477, which is a decrease.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see it continue to decrease, but I don't know, they keep moving, keep changing things, so it's kind of confusing. Anything else about the budget? Did anyone have any questions for Lewis on the budget? Amanda?
I have a couple of questions. Sorry. Lewis, on page 1 and on page 3, so page 3 is Wells Springs and page 1 is Middletown. There's 3,500 listed for summer school still, but I thought we weren't doing summer school or after school because we were using Boys and Girls Club. So I was wondering if that could be removed or why it was still there.
So many of our schools still have a little pot of money in there for summer school in case there's tutoring that's needed for one-on-one tutoring for academic purposes.
Okay. And then on page 2, there's Middletown Technology, and then on page 3, there's Wells Technology, and then on page 5, there's Wells Springs Technology. So all of those total a little over 60,000-ish, I think. Is that because of the programs that we're using, like Dreambox and stuff, or is that like IT people? What? Just trying to understand why there's 3 different spots for that.
So there's several different items that are hitting technology. There's computers and technology equipment that each school is purchasing for themselves. There was also a communications line. And in that communications line, there's both expenses that are being paid directly by the school, as well as expenses that were being paid by the SU and then being billed back to the school. So like internet and voice services that are coming over voice over IP, which is many of our regular phone lines. Those are coming through the SU because we're receiving an rebate. So we only pay a very small portion of the actual cost because we receive federal funding for those. So the piece that was being paid by the SU was taken out of the 2 school accounts and moved to the district account. And that's why there's a piece at the district level on page 5. So the piece that still remains in each of the schools is the equipment each school is purchasing, as well as the remaining phone lines that they're paying for. And the phone lines that they're paying for are the traditional copper lines that each school is required to have for like the fire alarm. If in your case, you don't have one, but if there was elevators, there's certain things that you have to have traditional phone lines for that can't be based on voice over IP. And voice over IP is when you have, phone services coming through your, which is what our regular phone lines are.
Okay, thank you. And then my final question is on page, I guess it's kind of at the end. It's it looks like maybe page 8, the food service section. There's an area on the top under account, and then there's Middletown and then Wells. So my first question is under account, where we have the third line, child nutrition subgrants for 115,000. Is that actually supposed to be listed as an expense or a credit if it's a grant?
That is a revenue. So that top section is all revenues. And that's the
Okay.
money, that's the money we're receiving for the meals that we're claiming.
Okay, and then when we looked at food service before, it was my understanding that since Middletown had the other food program, that their cost would be a little different, but it actually seems like Wells' cost is higher than Middletown's. It seems like if both school staff members took insurance, Wells is like maybe $12,000 higher if they took insurance, which didn't make sense because I thought that we were doing it differently between Middletown and Wells. Can you explain that?
So both schools operate the same type of program. They're both in-house programs. Currently, Middletown's expense is estimated at 93,000, and Wells is estimated at 88,000. Wells is serving more students. There's more students here. But the staff and costs at Middletown are more expensive.
Yeah, but it's only like $5,000 more at Middletown, and Wells doesn't have insurance, and it's still only. It just seems like the supplies and the food is way more at Wells, and it's only like 12 more students, isn't it?
No, it's about 30 students. Middletown's enrollment, I believe, is 53, and Wells is 83 maybe, or 80 something.
It's actually 80 right now.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if that's something worth looking at again or not. It's just something that I noticed. I guess I thought that with the difference in the food, the savings would be greater at Wells than it is. I don't know if it's worth looking at doing the same thing in both, or if we just want to not look at it again this year or not. But I would have expected a greater savings with keeping Wells different than we did last year, but I don't know how everyone else feels about it.
So I'm not sure we're referring to different. They both operate in-house programs. Is no different other than the fact that they're setting different menus based on the
Right.
director setting their own menus, but they're operating in the same manner.
But it costs more for food service for less students in one school. So what's the big
The
difference?
director.
Staff.
Just the staffing? That's,
So the wages are more and the insurance is more.
okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like there's insurance budgeted for Wells. Should there be? And then, because the wages really only look like $5,000 plus insurance. But if Wells it doesn't look like insurance is budgeted. So it still seems like it's.
Well, insurance maybe is not budgeted because that person is not taking insurance.
No, right. I understand that. I don't know. It just seems like if they're writing a different menu, because that's what we chose to do, then I would have thought the cost difference would have been greater with it's fine. Like we already decided it, but seeing it this way explains that really if we had another staff member without insurance, the food is really the same. So why is it a different menu? I guess is my point. Like the food, the cost of the food for 30 students is only like $4,000 different for the whole year. That seems silly.
Well, the menu isn't a board decision. That's based on the individual food service managers at the building level. They're setting their own menus. It wasn't a board decision to have different menus.
Yeah, didn't we have a food service manager at one point for both schools, or? We still have
Each school has a food service manager.
manager.
I mean, that's their title, but they're the only staff member in that position.
Okay.
They're not really managing. For 2 years ago, there was a part-time person at each school. That went away. And that wasn't a board decision. That was a building level decision based on, I think, decisions that were at each school. They decided that those positions were no longer needed for some reason. But that is the title that's given to them based on the hierarchy of the food service program. There's a food service director at the SU level and the person that's in charge of its building level, food service manager.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of, a director. I thought at one point in time there was a director who oversaw the programs at both schools. So yeah, but that has changed, and now you're the director. All right. All right. Did you have any other questions, Amanda, or?
I don't think so. Oh, I do. Sorry. Page 5. The 7,300 for board members. It's the second line under Board of Education.
What's the question?
I just wasn't sure what that was. Like, how is the board spending $7,000? Is that we put it in and if we choose to spend it on something, or is it like reimbursement? Is it what we're actually spending on board members? Just curious about that 7,000.
That is your stipend.
But there's 7, right? And so we don't all get $1,000. So is that for 2 years? It's just in one budget?
No, each board member receives a stipend. Plus there is a stipend for the SU representatives. They receive $100 per meeting that they get.
Okay, I thought that was 50 per SU meeting. Must be because there's 2 of us.
3. And that's been in place for years, actually. 2021.
Yeah, I didn't think it was 100.
It is 100.
Yeah.
Tomorrow in Wells.
Okay. So I had a couple of questions.
We have one thing that we would like to. Louis and I and Krista McGinnis met with the clerks yesterday to discuss just town meeting, March voting. And one of the things that they had asked for us to bring to the board consideration is around the purchasing of a second tabulator, which would make things move a lot quicker. I know that Corey Valley, we purchased an additional tabulator just to assist because currently, as per statute, we have to commingle votes. Basically requires, the transporting of physical votes from one location to another. And it is a very time-consuming process, but the second tabulator would allow for, as Wells brings their votes over to Milltown Springs, to move through that much quicker. And so, when we spoke with Patty and Nora, they had asked if we bring this for the board for consideration. And Was there anything like that? Or?
No, the cost is approximately $6,000. Also spoken with Terry about putting in a bill to consider the elimination of, or the options about commingle. But in the meantime, this would be a solution without changes in law.
Okay. $6,000. And that would be for, that'd come out of this year's budget, right?
Well, that's, I mean, yes, if we wanted it in place for the next election, we would have to take it out of this year's budget.
Yeah.
But if it's something the board didn't want to take out of this year's budget, we can consider it for the next budget season.
Yeah, for the following year.
Budget.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But by not as the other option, not commingling would be reporting separate towns.
Well, we give the districts the option to make that decision. Right now, you can't make that decision because statute says that they have to be commingled. So it would come back to the board if we were able to get something passed, it would come back to the board to make that decision.
Right. I went nowhere and Patty suggested, I think we looked at this by non-commingling, it would not necessarily be a report of how many people voted yes or no for Wells or Middletown. That we have this discussion really would be that Danny and Patty or Nora could call one other, say, here's what our votes were, and then they could say, give you the total for that. But,
Yep.
But I think that also depends on what the bill looks like. That's, Terry and his colleague maybe look at the drafts. But I think there are a lot of variations that
So I guess what happens if we purchase a $6,000 tabulator and then there's a change in statute and then we decide to not commingle, and what do we do with the tabulator? I don't know. I guess that's the discussion.
Well, that's a good question. And I mean, if we wanted to pursue the bill route first, and if that was unsuccessful, then we could go with the tabulator. I know one thing we talked about at our meeting was contacting the Secretary of State and seeing if we could get a tabulator at no cost. One of the clerks, I forget one of the ones, believe that they sometimes give them out to towns at no cost, so we can try that route first. And
Christine could reach out, has not heard back as of yet.
Okay. Yeah, I would be interested in exploring that option, and then,
Yeah, that's the ideal option.
Yeah.
They obviously give us one, sure. And like I said, with these legislation, Terry can attest, it's, just because there are a few people who think it's a good idea doesn't mean that's others may. So simple statutes always tricky proposition. But we just said, Patty and Nora just thought with with small towns.
So any way you look at it, though, you're running the ballots through the tabulator after the polls close. So people who are voting in person, I mean, you have to have a second tabulator at both places.
So my belief was that, and was talking is that as let's say that Wells brings all their ballots over to Middletown or vice versa, is if they have one tabulator running, instead they're doing the town votes, they have to wait till they finish with that. Then they have to place all those in. If they had a second tabulator while they're running the town ballots, they could also then run the school ballots separately on that second tabulator.
I mean, I work the polls and I
said that. So I'm you're much more an expert on this than we just said we'd bring it to the board for consideration, and we're.
Well, if we can get a free one, I guess, but either way, you're having to run after the polls have closed, run the ballots through.
Correct.
Unless you have a tabulator at both places. So, when you go to vote, you put your ballot in,
Right.
but you put your school ballot in a box, not through a tabulator.
yeah, when I worked the polls at Wells, I did it when Nora was our clerk. So we went through and basically counted them to make sure the ballots that were there matched the voter list, and then waited for Middletown Springs and then put them all through the tabulator. And, I mean, see, either way, you have to wait. And, I don't know. I think, you know, it's something worth, you know, considering like we are, but I'd like to, I don't know how anyone else feels, at least see if there's one available and then maybe make a decision in January if we want to,
Yeah, I mean, the difference is you have to put you have to take the cards out of the regular election out of the ballot and put in other computer cards.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not sure how much help it really is.
So we're just bringing it just to the board
Yeah.
for.
Anyone else want to comment or have any opposing views or? Yeah, so, you know, maybe we can wait and see if we hear back in January, when we'll, and then even, talk about the steps from there because I don't know. I got a couple ideas around it, but.
I don't think we were asking for an action, so I think it's.
Oh, okay.
Just bring it to the board, just your attention, and I think, sure, we still want to wait to hear back from the Secretary of State to see if they do have a tablet that they could provide to us.
All right, that'd be
If they
great.
say no, then that's a.
Yep.
So you said Corey Valley currently has a second ballot,
They purchased a second tablet last year.
but all the ballots still have to be brought to that tabulator.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
After
so they expressed the
polls
same
close.
concern.
Yeah.
They had the same concern last year with the commingling.
Yeah.
An issue finding people late at night to.
Oh, and you have a
to be two people.
snowstorm, et cetera.
And the weather's bad, typically of getting people to travel the roads late at night, from one town to another.
But the ballot doesn't, the tabulator doesn't change that.
No.
Correct.
There are two different issues, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're still running absentee ballots through your tabulator, then your tabulator's in use until that's done and you can't switch over.
And then the other item, there is an update on the Boys and Girls Club. I believe Sarah's.
Oh,
Hi.
nice.
I spoke with Nicole Rice today from Boys and Girls Club, and she has been able to hire another staff member, and they would like to open a program in Wells on January 6th.
Oh,
And Sarah, that information will go out to the parents by the end of this week, correct?
Yes, so she wasn't sure she could get the full information packet out this week, but at least a blurb to say it's coming will go this week. And then by next week, families should have all the applications and everything they need to sign up.
awesome. All right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess so it wouldn't make sense to consider the transportation for after school. That's in here. I mean, I know it's not in the budget, but, cause I was gonna ask about that, but I mean, that kind of changes. All right. So I did have, just a couple of, just questions on, page 2, Middletown Technology, supplies computer, is that exactly what it is? $7,000 for computers?
Yeah, it's computers, Promethean boards, and which is any sort of.
Okay, all right. I just wasn't sure if it was specifically just for computers. So tap the panel, please. Thank you. And then, 'cause I looked at the Wells one, and then there was 0 on there. So there's nothing budgeted for Wells.
It's probably in the line above it.
Trying to find the page. Like,
I think there's just
Oh, yeah.
Theirs is all under just supplies. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just, historical lines that were created back in the day.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Okay, it's just somewhere else.
The line right above it, they have a supply line.
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice that because there's more there. Okay. But it's still the same budget amount, just,
The Wells amount is a little bit higher. It's pretty close. So Middletown, the net of those two lines is 10.5, and Middletown and Wells is 11.4.
yeah. Okay. Amanda?
On page 3, do we know how many shared staff members we have that are included in that shared staff wage amount? Because I see like the counselor is separate for both schools, and then like the nurse is separate, and that the nurse is shared. But do we have how many people that number includes?
Yes. It's 2.
That answer your question, Amanda?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
There's 2 staff members in that section, but there's also some other funds built into that section for other staff members. We'd have to go into executive session.
Okay, could we talk about, I'm just curious how that's so much more.
We have unsettled contracts.
What section was she looking at again?
I'm looking at page 3, Wells District, or no, I'm sorry, page 4, Wells Springs instruction. The total for that is 384,000, but on page 3, there's Wells District instruction, and then page 1 is Middletown District instruction. So I assumed that the page 4 of Wells Springs instruction was our shared staff, but below that there was a separate section for the nurse and a separate section for the counselor. So I was just curious what shared staff was in that $384,000. That's really only 2 people?
So the number is 222,000 on page 4.
Yeah.
It's 222,000. Not, I think you just said a different number.
384, she's looking
Yeah,
at.
I was totaling up like with the insurance and all of the stuff. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so it's 2 staff members and then there's money built in there for unsettled contracts.
Yeah, a huge chunk of our budget is staff, so I would imagine that's going to.
Okay. And then my final question, sorry. Can you show me, Lewis, is there a place in here that shows like all of our revenues? Like, are we receiving money from any students? I'm wondering if there's any spot in our budget that shows where we are receiving funds.
Page 1 would be our revenue.
Okay, I
At the very
didn't.
top.
Okay, I might have a clarifying question later. I'm not sure yet, but thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. Any other discussion on the budget? So I take it everyone's okay with the, total expense, 5.5%, 2.84 education spending. Because I think if there were going to be any changes to the budget, it would need to be done now, for January, meeting. So, just a reminder. All right. Not hearing anything, Louis, so. Um, okay.
Looks good, Louis. It's good.
Could you tell me really quick what 1% of the budget would be? Like
60,000.
60,000? Okay. Because last year,
1% would be 63.
63, okay. But I was just curious because, last year with, and I would imagine a lot of this, is due to, some of the surplus that we've had to help drive down some of the spending and, because last year the budget, we approved like 4.5% increase to the budget and so I don't know, I was just curious if, 5.5%, if there's anywhere to, I guess, cut to try and bring it down to about the same increase that we had last year. And, that's just me just kind of thinking out loud here. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on where we're at on spending, but, yeah.
So, I mean, all of our districts have had surpluses because during the years of ESSER that were larger than normal. And one big piece of that was that we were funding positions that were in your local budgets, that we added during your local budgets, added into your local budgets while we still had those ESSER funds, so that when ESSER went away, there was no impact to your local budgets. And so for Well Springs, we were funding a portion of Middletown's interventionists through ESSER funds. Part of it was coming out of title funds, and 75% of it was coming out of ESSER funds. But that money was also in your local budget, so you were having those savings every year.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my question to the board is, would anyone be opposed at potentially having a third draft that is closer to 4.5%?
What we could do, Eric, if you would like, is we could come back and show you, not necessarily a redrafted budget, but just some of this, like what 1%, what 63,000, that would look like, what that would consist of.
Yeah.
What cuts we made. I don't think Louis would redraft the budget around that, but would just be working with Corey and Carol, just what that may look like, and for the board to consider if we were to cut the percentage 60,000. This is what may potentially be impacted by that.
Yeah. I just, and again, this is just me. I haven't heard from anyone else, but I think it would be just worth looking at just to see, from more of a, I guess, cost saving perspective. Amanda?
Sorry. Could we achieve that by, if you look at the warning, Article 9 has a portion where it talks about using that $65,000 for that surplus for capital improvement reserved fund. Can we get that cost savings by eliminating that from the warning?
So that is just a placeholder. We don't actually have that in this year's budget yet. We haven't discussed that. Currently, we're using all of the surplus as a revenue to offset the education spending and offset the tax rate. That's just on the warning because that we used that last year in case the board decided to do it again. It's just there, like I said, as a placeholder.
I'd be overall a bit concerned because we're still in negotiations and haven't settled everyone's contracts. And if we're going to skin the cat this close, we could run into negative territory, which is not as pleasant as positive territory.
Okay. Okay, so, I mean, yeah, yeah, and I don't know, I would just, again, like, I see how it would look, what changes are being made. I know, you know, negotiations is a whole nother thing, and, but, you know. Yeah. Matt?
I would say if we had any surplus that we should squirrel that away for any remediation we have to do going forward with the audit of the building, those chemicals,
Oh, the PCB.
Yeah, I'm nervous about that. Two of the oldest buildings in the district. And if there's money available to do all the remediation, or whether or not we'll need to take on some of that. So just sort of cautionary. I think maybe we should, if we do run a surplus, that we should hold on to it for any of those expenses.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Lewis said, any surplus that we have is in the budget. So if we take any of that surplus out, it's going to drive the cost up. And Article 9, as he said, was just a carryover. I don't even think that was, but we haven't even discussed that. So I think if we were going to make that decision, we should have made it back in October. If we're going to use surplus for capital maintenance, but.
No, I mean, I think we still have that option.
Okay.
This is the first time you're looking at a lot of the information regarding the tax rate. And I mean, I wouldn't even make any final decision on that until next month when we know what CLA and people can like. But so right now expenses up by 5.5, but spending is only up by 2.84 because of that one-time money. So we're looking at approximately $230,000 one-time money, which the downside is that if we don't have that one-time money next year, then when we look at FY27 budget, we were starting the budget process with $230,000 less in revenue. So that is the benefit to using some of that surplus to either put it into a capital improvement fund. One other new thing that we are doing with like Rutland Town has decided to do, and Corey Valley is looking at doing, is rather than putting it into a capital improvement fund, putting a line item right into the budget, which would be a one-time expense to match that one-time revenue for immediate facility repairs. Looking at your 5-year plan and seeing what can we do next year, that's a top priority. And let's just say you wanted to put $100,000 of that surplus towards it, we would just put a one-line item for we could even name the facility repair. Let's say it was boiler, replace a boiler, we can put boiler replacement, $100,000. And then the following year, when we don't have that additional revenue, we take that expense line out as well. So the net impact to your FY27 budget is zero. Revenue comes out, expense comes out.
Okay.
And, Matt, I know you brought up PCBs. I just want to remind the board that the scheduling has not changed. So Middletown Springs, the window is July 1st through September 30th of 2025. And then Wells Village is January 1st through March 31st, 2026. So Wells is scheduled for over a year from now, and then Middletown Springs this summer. And right, that is a concern because we don't know where the funding will be at
Yeah.
those times. So
Yeah.
that's the reality.
Maybe the law will change again to maybe reduce the criteria for.
Raise,
What's that?
be raising the criteria.
Yeah, changing it. All right, so, any other final thoughts on the budget? Any changes, anything else, we want, Chris and Lewis to bring back next month?
I emailed you, Chris, about, this was a oddball idea I had, which was from last meeting, I talked about, what if we added a language teacher? Because there's thoughts around having children exposed to languages and for their growth. And my idea was, what if we just, for a full-time position, I agree based off of what the administrator said, wouldn't work. But what if it was, let's say, 4th and 5th grade only, and if this was a shared position across the district, that the district sort of maintained and did. So I don't know if there's more to discuss on that, or if this was just like a,
When you
tell me this is a
yeah,
silly.
and I understand. I think that's
Yeah.
which, there is that regional approach around.
Yeah.
But I think that would be looking at and talking with other districts.
Yeah.
Around that, because then I know that whenever you share staff, in which we've done, we have that in other positions. You look at scheduling and how that would work, and but also whether it be 4 or 5 or 5, 6 here, and what that schedule look like for Corey and Carol. And then I think that would be something which we could look at, maybe not for the FY26, maybe FY27, just because there are a lot of logistics around that, around sharing of a language teacher across the SU.
Cool.
All right. So I guess for next month, for the board to consider potentially using surplus funds for capital maintenance and maybe looking at a 1% changes that would reflect 1% of the budget, just to see where those at. And I think that's it. Then we'll have the final numbers for the CLA and the pupil count, right? And then we'll have to make a decision, I guess. All right. There's no other discussion on the budget. We will move on to.
Eric, there was one thing that was in your packets, and this is just
Oh, yeah.
an item that came up at the GICSU board meeting around, we created a 1-page, very simple pamphlet with a QR code that a board member could share, whether it be on a email, on a Facebook page, or say at the town office or a post office, or even at the store, but somewhere just so they can quickly just take a picture of the QR code and access our budget sites. So this is what's, and I don't know if it's in your packets or not. Okay.
Yeah.
Just more for review, and if the board's okay with that, then we could, at the end of this week, share that with the boards and then get that up on our website. So.
No, I think this is great. I think it definitely adds another element. I remember we talked about it at the SU meeting, and the budget communication, and so I don't see any issues with it.
And Eric, there's part of the communication plan around SU. There's a chair letter that will be going out. I'll share that with you probably on Friday. And it really is just more in terms of it's going out to community members, to our families, how they can better engage with the budget, where they can find documents, linked to the community or question and answer section, They can email us, so just various ways they can just respond or just ask questions or just interact with board members or myself or Lewis or anyone else.
Okay.
So I'll share that with you. That's something which our goal would be to send out early next week.
Okay.
Prior to the holiday break.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And then, for the, just to go back to the warning really quick. So this is, except for the missing information for the budget and the numbers and all that stuff, all the language in here is basically ready to
So
go.
really, yes, it's free to review. Obviously, you don't have to prove that tonight, so it's something to look at in
Yeah.
January. But the one big change around the ballot language or budget language, get it back to where it was prior, which Lewis and I believe is a good thing, because I think last year when it just stayed the number, I think a lot of people were like, is that up or is that down? This gives a little more information for people that can see that, the budget make it down a little bit, or not as high up as what they make here. I know people here, the average right now, 5.9%. And last year, there was that number 18%. And there are people who really felt when they went to the ballot or the vote that it was 18%, and it really necessarily wasn't. Well, and so this gives a little more communication around that people will make a little more informed decision around whether they support the budget.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at, was that ballot language, because I know there was mixed feelings about that from other people I've talked to, and it was confusing, and I know that it had changed, and I just wasn't sure if this was the old language is what it reverted
And
to.
it's more transparent. I know there's some people who believe that the last language that, are we hiding something from them? Is it higher than 18? Because they were saying an average of 18, which after everything else, the average is around 13. But same thing this year, that they will be able to see exactly what that increase may be.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So we'll move on.
One other thing, is just around the openings, just make sure that's all set there too. To the board position openings, that's on the board line. We can clarify that in January.
Oh, yeah.
Since they're open for the term life.
Yeah, I saw that. It looked good to me. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have any appointed positions, so. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to superintendent's report.
Thanks. So this is information only. During this time right now is spent around budgets. But I do want to, there's one thing I want to highlight, and I know that Corey may talk about this as well, but on November 14th, I did have the opportunity to head up to Burlington for each year UVM recognizes individuals who have been named as the outstanding educators in the state of Vermont. And each SU or school district are allowed to select 2 individuals. This year, we had Lori Ellett from Rutland Town. We also had Steve Kanan from Middletown Springs. Unfortunately, Steve was not able to attend just due to other commitments. Certainly, but I was up there. His name is still read. They still projected an image, and so he was there, I guess, in spirits. But it was a very nice ceremony. I just wanted to once again congratulate Steve on a job well done and his well-deserved honor. And so, but it was a very nice ceremony. But I just wanted to publicly recognize Steve being recognized as UVM outstanding educator.
Great, yeah.
And I'm more
Okay.
happy to answer any questions if anyone has anything on.
Yeah, congratulations to Steve. That's a huge achievement. Any questions for superintendent? Okay, we'll move on to principals reports. Did you go last time? I can't remember. Or first last
I
time.
probably went first last time. Come on, Carol, to go first.
Okay,
All right, I'll go first. Just a couple of things, we always talk about how the community is involved, and I think being December, we recently had the Methodist Church come in and run the holiday store for our students, and it allows them to purchase gifts for people that they normally would not probably be able to go out and do at a very reasonable price, being $1/4 a piece. And they have time to mingle and get them wrapped and labeled. And it's a really fun time for the community to kind of get together, but also to watch the students and listen to them pick out the gifts. that they're getting for those special people in their lives. Also, the MWA this weekend is having a community gathering, and they provide each of our students with a ticket, and they attend and they get a present. So I think that's just another way that I feel our community is supporting us. I was gonna talk about the after school program. I know we've talked about, that's been something we've been waiting for. So it will be in the chalkboard on the 6th. Or on this Friday, and then next Friday, all of the paperwork that's necessary to kind of get families who maybe were looking into it before, to make sure that everything's set and up and running for the 6th of January. We're also really lucky because Eric Montbriand's going to be running a yo-yo club for us on Thursdays for about 7 weeks. And so I think we have students that are really looking forward to that. Our robotics club will be back in action in January again. She took a little bit of a break. Our basketball teams are up and running. They're starting practices this week, actually. And we are probably going to end up with a kindergarten through 2nd grade group. And then there's maybe a divide in the 3rd graders because we really don't have a lot of students to fill a team for our older kids. So we'll probably have a little bit of a divide there. A couple of challenges are, I'm going to talk a little bit about the subbing situation, because I think one of the things that you can't really see in our numbers is that we do have positions that don't get filled. And it is not for lack of getting a sub, but we also don't have people in a sub pool to fill those positions. Like for people working in our kitchen, we don't have a sub for that. We have had the custodian not in. And so it makes it really difficult. I think this week, a couple of times one day we had 5 people out and there was 1 sub that filled the position. So a lot of people were filling multiple roles. And I just want to thank everyone there who's stepping up and stepping in to get everything done. That being said, I'm very excited that we are hiring and have hired a facilities director. Looking forward to him starting in the beginning of the new year. And in part, that is because this afternoon there was a problem downstairs in our 4-5. I just want to make the board aware of it. The window that is in the 4-5 classroom, with all of the rain that we got, was leaking and is leaking again. I know Lisa Madison was there and went downstairs to help take care of it. But it's something that reached out to Rich Holcomb, who I have to say thank you to Rich Holcomb and the group at Polteny as well, because they have helped us out this week in particular, because we did not have a custodian. And they have shared with us this week to help us get some relief. But just so that you're aware that we are having it looked at, we're going to have someone come in and evaluate what needs to be done, because something needs to be done more permanently. And I will be getting back to you in January about that, about what's happening. And I think that's about it.
And Eric, I had one thing, Carol, I do want to, say thank you for recognizing the individuals, but I know that people always talk about the SU and what's the value of an SU. And I know this week, I think, particularly where, being down staff members, the custodians there, Polteny has sent over individuals on to assist, to help out here in the building. And you said Rich has been great about answering calls. Hopefully that if we get Ernest in place, that things will kind of settle down a bit. I personally just want to say thank you to Lisa Madison.
Yes,
has done a past month or so, has really kind of been doing double duty and helping out in a lot of ways. And but I just personally want to say thank you to her as well for her efforts here and pitching in. But so I think when people talk about the value of an SU, sometimes they always see the behind the scenes things, but there have been a lot of people that the past couple of weeks have been pitching in, helping out, going across districts, across SUs, just to assist, because that's just what that we do in the SU. We just help each other out when we see fit. So I just wanted to make note of that as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and actually I was
adding that.
I was going to say something similar, because when I came in the building, I noticed the custodian from Polteny was here, and I thought, wow, that's fantastic. Cause I didn't even know that that was being done, you know, so. Any questions for Carol? Amanda?
Hi. In the top portion of the report, while it says structures, the second bullet refers to the preparation of a new classroom for support.
Yep.
Supporting special needs students. Can you just confirm those are Wells Springs students or GRCSU students? Is that a GRCSU classroom or a Wells Springs classroom?
There are it is mostly Wells Springs, but there are students from other schools in the GRCSU.
Okay, thank you. I guess that goes back to what I was asking about the revenue in the budget. Like, is that maybe where we can see that 1% increase? And not that that goes to the principal's reports. Maybe this is the wrong place to ask it. But if we are having other students within the SU, is that a place where we can make up that 1% that we're talking about in the budget and be billed back for those students? Or
I mean, we do have tuition built into our budget. We have 34,000, which is 2 students.
I think she's referring to the students in the Bridges classroom that are outside of the Wells Springs district.
Right.
Is there tuition revenue from those students, or how does that work?
So I'm not aware of the actual students that are attending that program, like it has to be discussed, but all special ed costs are centralized through the SU, so everybody's paying their share based on IEP costs. So if it is let's say a Polney student that's attending a program, Polney is paying for those costs through the assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just going back to our SU meeting where Tammy Rescott had provided some information on the Bridges program, and she said it was going to be like a district base and that there wasn't going to be outside students. I mean, I like the idea of being able to offer a program like this to students outside of the district. It just makes sense rather than having, a small group of students. But I think, how does that work? I guess, I don't know, maybe this isn't the place for the right for the discussion, but I'm just curious because I had a different impression on how it was going to work. So.
Right. And on page 1, the tuition isn't any different. It's only $2,000 different than what it was for 25. And we didn't have those students in 25. So it should be a greater revenue if we actually are seeing that. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's done at the SU level though.
So I think that I would need to have further discussions with Tammy, because I was under the impression that, for one, that only the students that from Wells Springs would be in this program.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So
we can get some information in January.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I think that'd be
But
appropriate.
I think that what Meredith said, the way, special education, the way it is assessed and billed is differently than general ed students as well. So.
Yeah.
Right. I just thought that they would be receiving general ed services in the Bridges classroom, and that was the purpose of changing it to the Bridges classroom. So therefore, it would be a general ed spending.
So that, like I said, Amanda, that's something which we have to take a look at and see. The program hasn't begun as of yet. So, we'd have to talk with Katie and Tammy Prescott about this. So maybe we can have one of them attend the January meeting. Just if there are any questions about what that looks like.
Okay.
And maybe that should be an executive session.
It would be.
I think
that specifically if we're talking about. Yes.
we're on the edge of identifying here.
Yes.
I don't really like that.
I mean, we're just talking about the program. I mean, I don't see any identifying factors around that, but no, I think that'd be good. Just because, like I said, I thought it was going to operate differently, but.
Well, we don't know how it's going to operate. I mean, I think that's So I think Tammy or Dave have to come in and explain what that really looks like. So I think they'd be better qualified.
Sounds good. Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, Corey.
Sure. So not just at Middletown, but at Middletown, Pulteney and Wells, teachers have been participating in training around the Bridges Math program. At Middletown, we have taken some faculty meetings to talk as a staff about how we can just best support each other to ensure a smooth transition. So we're really looking forward. A lot of teachers are starting to dig into the materials. Some of them are exploring implementing portions of it, specifically Number Corner, which is like the calendar portion, this year to start building routines with students and becoming familiar with it themselves. We are really excited. We brought an interventionist before the GRCSU board last week, and the interventionist was approved. She will be starting on January 6th and will be working with us Monday through Thursdays. When we get back from break, we actually start winter sports on Monday afternoon. So it's going to provide us with a nice opportunity. Every week, I'm going to keep a different teacher back from winter sports so that the teacher can meet with the interventionist so that she can get to know the students and that the teacher and the interventionist can do some planning and discussing around classrooms. I included in my report, and if you go online, you can click it. I presented at the GRCSU board just a few highlights on Middletown Springs, so I included that presentation for you. There are two very short videos highlighting two of our classrooms. Our second grade classroom, who has been learning about weather patterns and climate and how that impacts different tribes and tribal regions. And then our third grade students who have been really working hard on their multiplication automaticity to meet the third grade standard of knowing all their 1 digit by 1 digit multiplication facts by memory. Ms. Regan celebrates the students when they prove mastery with that. And she is currently up to 5 students who have mastered their multiplication facts, with every single student showing incredible progress so far. So that's been really exciting. Our 5th and 6th grade students have built Genius Hour into their schedule, and one of our students dove into the topic of photography, and she had the opportunity, she came to me and scheduled a whole school assembly so that she could present on her topic to the whole school, which was really nice. Carol had mentioned that we've presented you all with our candidate for the facilities director. So we're really excited to have Ernie join us and begin at the beginning of the new year. That officially puts Middletown as fully staffed for this year, which is really exciting for us. So yeah. Let's see. And then just Carol did highlight the challenges with subbing. One of the big challenges that Middletown is having with subbing is around our pre-K. We to date have a 0% fill rate with our pre-K. In order to sub or work period in the preschool classroom, there are additional requirements that are set forth by the state. Staff members are required to have a 9-hour pre-K orientation training, mandated reporter training, and a first aid CPR training. So all in all, that equals about 2 days worth of trainings. And we do not have any subs on our list who have opted to go through that training. So anytime we have pre-K staff out, we are trying to fill from within. If we have made the decision to certify, make sure as many of our staff meet the requirement as possible. So all of our IAs, all of our specials teachers, so that should we have a student who's out and we're able to shift staff around, we can do so. But many days when we have absences in that room, it's either myself or Miss Swain. So that's been a big challenge for us this year. I've been working with Sarah and I've chatted with Chris a little bit about this. We are preparing a letter to send out to parents, just explaining the additional requirements, the challenges that we've had with staffing, and that we may find ourselves in situations where we have to close the program because we are not able to staff the room. If we cannot have certified staff in the room, we cannot operate the program. And we just want parents to be aware that that possibility exists. We will do everything we can to try to fill it. But with, we don't have any absences and it's just Miss Swain and I, it becomes an even bigger challenge.
And I just want to clarify, it says close the program, not for good.
Oh, yeah, no, it's today.
So maybe on that, like on a Thursday, we can't fill, so maybe on that day, we don't have pre-K, but Friday, we'll be back up and running.
Yes,
So I just wanted to clarify that.
we're not shutting the program down.
Right.
We may need to cancel for the day, if we can adequately staff.
And that's a huge, huge challenge, I would imagine.
Can the interventionist, I know that that's not a teacher role, but that person step in actually?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, she would have to have all the requirements. So that would be 2 days out of the classroom or 2 days out of working with students who need intervention. And then anytime we're pulling staff from other positions, it has a bigger impact, right? So if we're pulling Miss Swain, if we're pulling the interventionist, then we have students who are not receiving services. So while in an emergency situation, you know, you have someone who calls in at 4:30 because they're sick, that would be something we would look at. But if we're looking at multiple absences for valid reasons, pulling that person multiple times throughout the week no longer becomes a viable option for us.
Just out of curiosity, this training, where would they go for this kind of
It's all
training?
online.
It's all
It's
online?
all online. Yep.
Okay. So it's offered online, probably during the day at specific times?
It's asynchronous, so people can do it at their own pace.
Oh, okay.
But
Still, that's a
that's still
lot.
2 days,
Yeah,
2
it's still-
days
Yeah,
of additional training.
okay. First, thank you for your presentation at the SU meeting. I thought it was fantastic, by the way. Yeah, come more often. Okay. I did have a question on the PLC focus group. You said this was the second one. Was this the second one this year or just overall?
Yeah, so the way that we've structured that is the first, it's more an extension of the first cycle. So teachers have read the first chapter of this book, which talks about shifts to make specifically around comprehension and small changes that you can make to your instruction to improve comprehension. And so teachers were asked to pick one of those small changes to implement. If there's a plan that they follow, so they're supposed to have a way to document success, or if something's not, if they're not seeing the success they would hope to see with the implementation. And so what they do is they go through an 8-week cycle of implementing this change and documenting with data how it's going. At the end of that 8-week cycle, this is where we got together for our second meeting, where they met with each other and they shared that data and they talked about successes they were having. They talked about challenges. And then within this cycle, once you reach that point, you decide, okay, this is working. We're going to now plan for longevity with this change. It's working, but we need to tweak it a little bit. So you tweak it and go into another 8-week cycle, or it did not have the intended impact. And so now I'm going to try something different for the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I read through it all and I think that's, just more of a comment, just like, I think that's fantastic. That's something being done at district level. It's all teachers, right?
Yes, all teachers, including specialist teachers, we've included as well.
That's great. The other question I had kind of pertained to the physical plant around the outdoor classroom. Now, before, we had our previous facility director, like the clerk of the work, who was monitoring and overseeing this project. And so I'm just curious, any changes to this now that we've technically hired Ernest, so he's here tonight. Welcome aboard. Is that expectation that he's going to pick this up?
So the conversation that I've had with Ashley was that this is really an FFE project. And so we're looking at changing the site after many conversations that she and I have had after she came and presented to the staff, and they had some recommendations. There was concern about the placement and the sledding hill. And so that requires different permits, things like that. So she is doing all of that legwork. And then once we're ready to start the process of site work, things like that, then our facilities director would kind of help mediate that process.
Right, right. And I think, well, I think all through the process, and we talked about this last year or the year before when we discussed it, that we had, you know, because this is being done, you know, within the school grounds, that there's some sort of oversight, you know, because the board can't oversight. So that what came to our facility director, you know, who we dubbed clerk of the work. So I think, you know, I think there should be a significant amount of involvements with whomever that is, you know, before, you know, because I'd hate to see them make all these plans and then be like, okay, we want to build it here. And then, you know, that said person is like, well, you can't do that because there's septic there or something like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm just.
Yes, so Ashley's next steps are she's supposed to be reaching out to the town to talk about like property lines. She's supposed to be reaching out to, you know, the fire department to talk about, you know, access, because with the other location, access was really easy. There's that class 4, whatever it is, that's right there. You know, so does the new site even work? So she was looking into those things. She is not doing, like, there's no ground is being broken without the school. And yes, Ernie would be involved.
Yeah, that'd be good. I just think, and I know we asked for updates from Scott, and Scott provided updates. You know, at that time, there really wasn't much of an update, you know, because things had stalled, I guess. But, you know, I think that'd be the same expectation that if, you know, when this was presented, it was presented like, this is what the structure is going to look like. This is how it's going to be built. This is where it's going to go. So I, you know, I think even if it's just an informational update, I think, you know, the board should be aware of it, you know, moving forward. But, you know, I'm glad that they're able to continue moving forward with it as well. So, but yeah, that was I just wanted to ask about that. And I think that's it. Anyone else have questions? All right. Thank you. Thank you both. All right. So we're going to move on to community engagement update. So just you know, a bit of an update. The flyers went out, or the postcards went out, I should say. I don't know if everyone had received them. I know I got one. But it has expanded our email subscription. I think we're at like what, 150 now or something like that. Yeah, so I think as far as community engagement goes, you know, it's on the agenda for discussion. What any ideas or any consideration for the board for next steps, what we want to do. And I think, you know, a couple things, the budget communication that Chris shared with us today might be something good to share. And then probably most likely the also the budget communication email that or letter that you spoke about earlier might be something else. But I think, yeah, trying to get more people involved is ongoing tricky process. So any thoughts, discussion?
In terms of the, you know, the consolidation forums we had, now we're taking a break kind of from that to do budget. At some point, are we going to circle back and just summarize key points or make decisions on that and inform the community? Do we have a plan for that? I forget.
Great question. Yeah, so I think when we spoke about it before, the idea was that we try and expand getting people involved, especially in the email communication, because I think that's a huge piece that parents who aren't directly involved with the school, right? And those who are. And then from there, you know, we could send out that information we had talked about before, like the feedback form, the feedback survey that we had for the forums, and then also the presentation and the video, the one recording. So, I mean, that's something that, if that's what you're talking about, we can definitely.
Yeah, I feel like we need to like sort of maybe summarize or come up with a position after budget cycle, and
Maybe after reorg.
maybe after reorg, yeah.
Yeah, well, when we talked about it back in what, October, I think we're gonna wait until after the budget. So I mean, we should at least probably start talking about it in January or February or something. At least from a board perspective, like next steps on consolidation, because right now it's just kind of hanging in the air. And maybe with, like you suggested, just one push out with the forum stuff, right? The community forum stuff might add some additional feedback to the surveys. So I don't know. Amanda?
I agree that we should send that out, but I think before we do that, even after speaking with people after receiving the postcards, I spoke with quite a few people around the community, and many of them hadn't or still haven't signed up for our email because there was a misunderstanding where they thought what we were sending out pertained only to what was taking place in our schools day-to-day period. They didn't understand that as a taxpayer, we might be talking about budget stuff, or we might be talking about things that maybe we could invite them to, or things that are happening. Many of the people I spoke with said, well, my grandkids are in high school now, or I don't have kids in school anymore, or I just moved here, or I'm only here for the summer for the lake, or, I heard a lot of those kind of responses. And I think that before we continue to talk about our special messages and like getting more messages out there, we really need to reevaluate getting more people to sign up to receive our email. And I had a couple of ideas of how we could do that. I think we need to do a lot of face-to-face stuff, but to go along with that, another thing I heard from the community too is like way back pre-COVID and pre even me living in Wells, the school used to invite people to like holiday dinners, I guess, like Thanksgiving lunches and such. I haven't seen that since I've lived here. But I guess they're used to, the people in the community that I have spoken with have felt like there used to be more things that they were invited to, even if they didn't have kids in the school, like a Veterans Day social or Thanksgiving dinner or, holiday brunch or concerts even. And we just don't have a lot of those. So I also wonder if maybe as a board, we could look at something like a dinner or some kind of event that we can invite both communities to, maybe 2 different nights. One night, both communities are invited to Wells, and one night, both communities are invited to Middletown. And during those events, talk to people to sign up, because I think we are making progress with our MailChimp account, but I think we're still not there. So I don't know, that's just my thought on community engagement and ways we can do things, but I don't know how everyone else feels.
We used to have like a potluck whenever we had our annual meetings. Remember those?
We've served soup
Yeah.
at ours.
We would all bring something and feed people.
Didn't you just have a Veterans Day celebration at the school? where
Yeah,
you
so
had
we-
community
We
members.
started what we hope is going to be an annual Veterans Day. We've talked about holiday meals, but with one person in the kitchen, inviting additional people
Oh, yeah.
is challenging. But we've talked about other opportunities and
Because the
ways around
FFA
that.
used to host a grandparents /
Yes,
senior.
I have heard about that. So yeah, we've talked about looking at expanding those opportunities to bring the community in and, leveraging like the epic and things like that. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know, those might be additional opportunities for board members to volunteer and get involved, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I know, I can't remember, I think we were merged, maybe we weren't. We did have like I said, a soup, maybe it was a soup and salad meal before our annual meeting. So, sort of to encourage people to, because we kind of mess up dinner that night anyways.
Yeah.
So, and it was a way to get more people to attend the meeting. And I think we had a few more people.
Yeah. I remember we did it in 2019 at our annual meeting.
Was that in Middletown?
Uh,
I think it might have been.
we did one here,
Okay.
and I want to say maybe we did it in 2020,
Yeah, I
just
remember it
before
here.
COVID. Like, but I remember the one here because, yeah, because there were quite a few people I didn't even know here.
Free food.
Yeah, it was free food. I don't know. That might be something. And I hear Sue's really good at spaghetti, right? Spaghetti there?
No, I did real meals.
Real meals?
I did usually a pork roast.
Oh,
I did beef dinners. I did bigger dinners.
really? Back when you were on? Like-
Yeah, I was on the, when
Yeah, before.
you were there. Carol, what did we do? When you were back in here at the school, what did we do for dinners? We did the dinner and a movie. What did we do?
Yeah, so sometimes we did do pizza,
We did
but
the-
it just depended on how many kids were coming and just what the interest was. But there were a lot of different ones.
We did soups, we did beef, we did pork roast, we did, they had the turkey stuffing, we had all Thanksgiving dinners. And whatever they have.
Oh, were those PTO activities, or was that when you were on like board related activities?
That was just was it PTO?
It
Yeah.
was sponsored by PTO, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking even like a fundraiser opportunity, if we could help out with, like, if it was a spaghetti dinner or some kind of dinner, like even if it's $2 a meal, like then we use that to hold another one, and don't just invite parents and grandparents, invite the town, and maybe while they're there, the kids play their instruments, what they learned for the year, or I don't know. I think that we keep saying that we want the community involved, but the community that's getting invited consistently are the parents. We're not inviting the people that we're not hearing from. And so we continue to not hear from them or get them to sign up. And I think we just need to explore ways to get the rest of the taxpayers, not just the parents and grandparents and such.
Yeah.
I think, so Middletown, PTO, FFE, they just did a bingo night that was pretty successful. And I saw a lot of new faces there. If that continues, and I think that's the plan, to continue it once a month, that could be a spot where we can come around and get people to sign up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the key, is getting more people, like being able to reach out to those people.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and of course, coming to school events is a big thing, but
I can do that the next bingo. I've got it down, you can bring
okay,
out the iPad, and it's
absolutely.
it's pretty helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't make it, reach out. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so anything else about community engagement? Maybe we can try and do, well, I guess I'll just ask, like, how do people feel about something around our annual meeting again, like we used to do? Too much work? Because it require everyone to pitch in. Just to throw that out there, like, you can't be like, yeah, let's do it, and then you just don't show up with the cookies you said you were gonna bring. Well, we can talk about it in January too. We don't have to make a decision tonight. It's just something to think about because,
Or even if there's any money that we could, like in the past when we did our retreat, we ordered some food. In the past, not many people have come to our annual meeting, so maybe there's enough money that we all bring a little something and then order something in addition. Might be an option as well.
yeah, well, and I just thought about this. Our annual meeting is hybrid, so, so, I mean, who knows how it's gonna work, but, or turn out, I should say. All right,
But I mean, just circle back, I think, in terms of community engagement, I think we do owe the community a response based off of our thinking or where our heads are at in terms of consolidation.
Yeah.
So maybe
Well,
during the reorg, then we have something we can.
I
get
think
out.
our minutes said that we would send it in January. I think if we go back to our October minutes, it says that we will send that special message via MailChimp in January after our budgeting session is closer to.
I don't, I'd have to go back and look, but I think that following the postcards going out, we would send it out and then start picking up the consolidation discussion in January.
Okay.
That's how I remember it. And again, it's not like we're in a rush to make a decision, but
No,
We
I
still
would
need
say there's a whole lot of stuff that could be happening at the legislature and being handed down from the interim Secretary of Education. That's gonna maybe make our best efforts futile.
And that's okay if the message is we're still waiting or still discussing it.
Yeah.
But like maybe some sort of update to the community
yeah.
at that time.
Well, so I'm still trying to clarify what you mean. Update following, or you want
We're
to,
still discussing or we're still looking into, or this is what our thoughts are at the moment.
well, I think we should send out the survey via MailChimp again with the budgetary, or the forum, not budgetary, the forum information that we have, right? See if there's any more responses, but we really haven't decided where we're going to go. We just kind of push this till after budget. So I guess when we just kind of skipping ahead to future meeting dates and agenda items, I think it'd be good to know if we want to put, the consolidation discussion back on the budget in January.
I mean, back on the agenda.
Sorry. On the agenda, putting consolidation on the agenda in January, or February, or, I think, after the budget, we should start the discussion and just go from, any additional, survey feedback we got, what next steps we want to take. So maybe February, because originally I was thinking January, but maybe we still have some budget discussion in January, so that'd probably be better to save for February.
Matt, are you asking basically to just send out that PowerPoint minutes from the forums, not a specific where we're going next? Because that's kind of what we have and what we prepared is just that PowerPoint with notes from the forums that we held, but we're really not making any decisions or anything. So even when we send something out about it, what we composed and kind of discussed is really just a summary of what we talked about. And then the survey, is that kind of what you're hoping to send out sooner than later?
Yeah, we're still in the sort of get input from the community stage.
Mhm.
But I know just being in those forums that it was triggering to some community members. And so in terms of how fast the process is going to go, and there's a lot of questions that maybe we could maybe answer for those folks and, give, based off of our thinking then, give them some idea about, how the process is going, just give them general update. Because, you know, it was, in my opinion, it was like full on, let's engage the community. And now we're full on budget. We sort of left that piece here. And for some community members, that might be, scary. So I think just a general update would be helpful to the community about where we're at in the process and what stage we're in terms of thinking about it.
And I guess the update would be is that we're trying to gather more survey information and we're going to discuss it in February. Because that's basically where we're at on it. So, but yeah.
Is that something, would you like me to compose a sample and bring it to January? Or are we talking about sending something out before the January meeting? Because I could play with what we started putting together before and make it more of an informational, here's where we at, we'll be back in a couple months, just to keep people in the loop, show it to you guys in January, and then we can decide if we're sending it. We could even send it night of the meeting. It's not like if it's composed and we say, okay, we can just ship it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think as part of this discussion, and waiting for the postcards to go out for the MailChimp sign up stuff. Taking that community forum stuff that we had, and I know looking into MailChimp, Amanda has drafted it with all the stuff in there. Send that out to collect information. I guess the hope is that there would be a lot more subscriptions, but it is what it is. And yeah.
Does it get a little confusing though to be, approving a budget, putting the budget out to the community, asking for their support, and then talking about consolidation at the same time? I don't think that's I think that's a muddled message.
Yeah.
So I think putting more time between the two is better than at the same time. I'm not talking about an epic amount of time, but I think February is fine, or even, like I said, reorg.
Okay. But so are you talking about sending anything out via MailChimp? Or are you talking about?
I kind of think almost waiting.
Okay.
I just, I understand what you're saying in terms of people want to know what's going on, but it's going to confuse our message. We're trying to get a budget approved.
Yeah. And that was something I was thinking about too, is having, trying to present the budget, trying to get it approved, and then saying, oh, by the way, but I don't know. My concern is I don't want to lose the momentum we had around consolidation. We had the timeline back in the fall. I think it worked pretty good. But I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. And so either way, I think folks need to be aware that it's not lost or forgotten, but it's just kind of like we're taking it on one big thing at a time, I guess. I would be fine with waiting. I don't have an issue with it because I do think the budget is the bigger discussion. And then just going back to last year when we were doing both at the same time, it got really confusing. So, all right. Anyone else? And just for consensus, unanimous consent, I guess, is everyone okay with waiting? Having said that. All right. I saw it. All right. So we'll move on to, there's no executive session tonight. General public comments again. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to speak at all? Okay. So our next meeting is January 8th at Middletown Springs, and that's all we have for tonight. So a motion to Amanda.
Can we add to that agenda, just to review that Bridges classroom and confirmation? Maybe it needs to be an executive session, but can we just put that on for next month?
Sure. All right. Okay, so a motion to adjourn at 7:56 would be in order.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Matt. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.